What if your worst fear came true tonight? Imagine stumbling upon a village that isn't on any map, a place where people vanish without a trace, every single year. Would you dare to stay knowing it could be your last night? Tonight, we explore the haunting mystery of Silverbend, a place shrouded in darkness, where one journalist's search for truth led her to the edge of terror. This chilling tale is inspired by real-life disappearances that have baffled investigators for years. Anna received an anonymous email that simply read, "Visit Silverbend. It's not on any map, but every year someone disappears there." Intrigued, she searched online but found nothing. No records, no mentions of the village. It was as if it didn't exist. For Anna, a journalist known for chasing obscure mysteries, this was irresistible. Her editor dismissed the lead as nonsense, but Anna couldn't let it go. Packing her camera, recorder, and supplies, she set off to find Silverbend. The drive was uneventful at first, but as she got closer, the GPS failed, and the paved roads gave way to gravel paths. Soon she was driving down a narrow dirt road surrounded by dense forest. When she was about to turn back, a weathered sign appeared, barely visible through the overgrowth. Silverbend, population 132. Crossing into the village, Anna felt an immediate sense of unease. Streets were deserted, the air unnaturally still. Houses were worn and crooked, with windows boarded or cracked. The entire place felt abandoned, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Near the village square, she found a small shop. The flickering light inside cast long shadows. The shopkeeper barely looked up as she entered. When Anna asked about the village, he muttered without meeting her eyes, "You shouldn't have come here." His words sent a chill down her spine, but they only fueled her determination to uncover Silverbend's dark secrets. Anna spent the next few hours knocking on doors, but the responses were the same: fearful looks, vague warnings, and slammed doors. Most villagers refused to speak to her. Finally, an elderly woman hesitantly invited her in. The woman's house was small and cluttered, but it felt lived in, unlike the other abandoned-looking homes. As they sat at a wobbly wooden table, the woman poured tea with trembling hands. "You should leave before nightfall," she whispered. Anna leaned in, her recorder discreetly running. "Why?" she asked. The woman hesitated, glancing nervously at the window. "Every October 15th, someone disappears. No body, no struggle, just gone. It's the forest," she said, her voice barely audible. "They take them." "Who are they?" Anna pressed. The woman's face turned pale, and she shook her head violently. "We don't speak of them," she said, standing abruptly. "You need to leave, now." The cryptic warning only deepened Anna's resolve. Back at the small inn she had rented, she spread out her notes. Every October 15th, someone vanished without a trace. No reports, no investigations. Silverbend didn't exist to the outside world. It was as if the village's secrets were buried, just like its victims. That night, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching her. Shadows danced outside her window, and the silence of the village seemed to hum with an unseen presence. She tried to convince herself it was paranoia, but deep down, she knew better. The next day, Anna decided to explore the forest. Villagers had warned her to stay away, but she was determined to uncover the truth. Armed with a flashlight and her recorder, she followed a narrow path into the woods. The forest was unnaturally quiet. No bird song, no rustling of animals, just the crunch of leaves under her boots. The deeper she went, the darker it grew, as if the trees were swallowing the sunlight. And then she heard it, faint whispers, carried on the wind. Anna stopped, her heart pounding. She swung her flashlight in the direction of the sound, but there was nothing there. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, but she couldn't make out the words. It was as if the forest itself was speaking. She stumbled upon a clearing with a stone altar at its center. The altar was ancient, covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow faintly. The air here was colder, heavy with a metallic scent that made her stomach turn. As Anna examined the altar, she felt a presence behind her. Turning slowly, she saw a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the clearing. The flashlight flickered, and the figure disappeared. Panic set in as the whispers turned into a low hum, reverberating through the trees. Anna fled, the path twisting around her as if the forest was alive, trying to keep her trapped. Anna returned to the inn, her hands trembling as she replayed the audio from her recorder. The whispers from the forest were faint but clear, overlapping voices speaking in a language she didn't understand. She couldn't sleep that night, not with the shadows outside her window and the haunting whispers replaying in her mind. The next morning, Anna decided to dig deeper. She searched for anyone in the village who might give her answers. Most people avoided her, locking their doors as she approached. Finally, she found a small library hidden behind an overgrown garden. Inside, she discovered an old journal tucked into a dusty corner. The journal belonged to Samuel, a villager who had vanished a decade earlier. The entries began innocently, accounts of daily life in Silverbend, but soon turned dark. "The whispers are louder now," one entry read. "They call my name. I can feel them watching." The last entry was hastily scrawled, "October 15th. They're outside my window. I know it's my turn." Anna's pulse quickened as she realized the date. Today was October 15th. She hurried back to the inn, her mind racing. The whispers, the altar, the disappearances, they were all connected. But how? That evening, she noticed the villagers gathering near the forest's edge. From her window, she saw them lighting torches and chanting in low, rhythmic voices. They weren't victims, they were participants. Anna grabbed her recorder and followed them into the woods, determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Anna followed the villagers into the forest, keeping a safe distance. Their torches cast flickering light, illuminating the dark, twisted trees. The air grew colder with every step, and the whispers returned, louder and more urgent. They seemed to echo from the very trees, wrapping around her like a warning. The villagers stopped at a large clearing. At its center stood a stone altar, ancient and weathered, covered in glowing red symbols. They formed a circle around the altar, chanting in a strange, guttural language. Anna crouched behind a tree, her recorder running, heart pounding as she realized she was witnessing something far darker than she had imagined. Her breath caught when she saw a woman being led to the altar, her hands bound, terror etched on her face. Two villagers forced her to kneel as the chanting reached a fever pitch. This wasn't just a random disappearance. This was a ritual sacrifice. As the leader raised a knife, the forest erupted into chaos. The whispers turned into a deafening roar, and the ground beneath them seemed to tremble. The villagers froze, their torches flickering wildly. The forest felt alive, angry, and the air crackled with energy. Anna tried to run, but the shadows around the clearing began to shift. Figures with glowing eyes emerged from the darkness. These weren't villagers. They were the ones who demanded the sacrifices. And now they were looking straight at Anna. Anna's survival instincts kicked in as the shadowy figures closed in. She scrambled to her feet, her flashlight barely illuminating the twisted shapes of the trees around her. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that seemed to burrow into her mind. She ran blindly through the forest, the path shifting and twisting as though the trees were conspiring against her. Every direction felt the same, and the glowing eyes of the shadowy figures seemed to follow her no matter which way she turned. Suddenly, she stumbled into another clearing. This one was different, smaller, darker, and eerily silent. At its center stood a large mirror, cracked and covered in a thick layer of dust. The whispers stopped abruptly, replaced by a deafening silence. Anna approached the mirror cautiously, drawn to it despite the overwhelming dread that gripped her. As she wiped away the dust, her reflection stared back at her. But it wasn't her reflection. It smiled, a slow, sinister grin that didn't match the terror on her face. She screamed and backed away, but the reflection remained, watching her, smiling. The whispers returned, louder than ever, and the shadowy figures appeared at the edge of the clearing. They surrounded her, their glowing eyes fixed on her, as the mirror began to shimmer. Anna felt a force pulling her toward the mirror, her feet sliding across the ground. She grabbed at the dirt, the roots, anything to stop herself, but it was no use. The last thing she saw before the world went dark was her own reflection stepping out of the mirror, grinning. When Anna woke up, she was in her car, parked at the edge of the forest. The morning sun was rising, its warm light cutting through the mist that clung to the trees. Her heart pounded as she looked around, expecting to see the shadowy figures or the altar, but there was nothing. The village of Silverbend was gone. Anna stumbled out of the car, her legs weak and unsteady. She scanned the area, desperate for any sign that what she'd experienced was real. But the dirt road she had driven down was now overgrown with weeds, as if no one had traveled it in years. The rusted sign for Silverbend was missing. Back in the nearest town, Anna tried to explain what had happened, but no one believed her. "There's no village called Silverbend," a local said, looking at her like she was crazy. Even her editor dismissed her story. "You've been pushing too hard lately," he said. "Take a break." But Anna couldn't shake the feeling that she had narrowly escaped something far worse than death. Back in her apartment, she reviewed the footage from her recorder. Most of it was static, but there were fragments, whispers, shadowy figures moving in the forest, and her own voice, panicked and pleading. And then there was the audio from the final moments. Clear as day, the whispers spoke in unison. "You'll be back." Anna slammed the recorder shut, her hands trembling. That night, as she tried to sleep, she felt a familiar chill in the air. The whispers began again, faint but unmistakable, echoing through her apartment. When she turned toward the mirror on her wall, her reflection was smiling. What do you think happened to Anna? Was Silverbend real, or was it a nightmare that followed her home? Share your theories in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If this story gave you chills, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next terrifying tale. Until then, stay curious and stay safe.